Welcome into another edition of New Track Record. Caleb Hatch and Justin Kinney with you. Hello, Justin.
Hello, Mr. Hatch.
This is it, at least for us here in Indiana, the last truly nice day of 2022.
Yeah, it ends here. Got into the 70s today, sunny, but tomorrow in the 50s, and then basically a bunch of 40s and 30s for the next 7 to 10 days. So I think this is the last day in the 70s. And considering we got it in mid-November, I'd say it's pretty good.
No complaints. We had this debate on our morning show on the radio station today as we record here on Thursday, November 10th here in the States. But the debate, I guess actually it was yesterday, but I mulched the leaves in the yard as opposed to, I'm not a rake or I hate leaf blowers with a passion. So I mulched the leaves, got that done. Hopefully I don't have to do anything more with the mower, be done with it for the year, because soon enough it'll start snowing. And well, I mean, we already had snow here, but it'll snow again.
It'll snow.
Perhaps as early as this weekend.
Yeah, so maybe flurries in the forecast. I did the same thing yesterday. Me and my son mulched the leaves with the mower. Don't get this concept of people having to rake their leaves. And you and I, are, at least in that respect, are on the same page.
Yes, we are anti-rake.
Anti-rake, yes. What's the point?
Which isn't rake. No, I'm thinking strake is like a thing on an IndyCar. So I'm getting
correct. No strake.
Speaking of IndyCar, we'll
I guess we'll talk about IndyCar.
Yes. So surprisingly, no major driver announcements. We'll get to one thing later on that is not official, but we expect to happen in regards to Takuma Sato, plus some more. Not fallout, that's not the right word, but just some more details coming out on Jimmy Johnson as he's now part of the Petty GMS team. Going to run a handful of cup races. Obviously, Daytona. He wants to run the All-Star race at North Wilkesboro, which is the same weekend as Indy 500 qualifying, so that may be some sort of issue there.
Would he want to run Chicago, potentially?
Yeah, that'd be a possibility. Obviously, also doing Le Mans as well for that Garage 56 or whatever the project's called. But I think this week, and we teased it last week, and we're actually following up on it, so props to us. But we're
following what we said.
Yes, so last Friday, which would have been November 4th, was the 3-year anniversary of the shocking announcement. There's no other word to use because the complete shock came out at 8 a.m. I think that morning. And I remember waking up because that was back before I had to get up early. And my phone I woke up and I had texts all over the place from people. I think I woke up and had like 30, 40 texts.
Good Lord.
Some from like a group chat. So that's not a surprise.
Sure.
And it was Penske had bought IMS, IndyCar, and also IMS Productions. Now, the deal hadn't been finalized then. That wasn't finalized till I think after the first of the year in 2019. But it's been just over 3 years since that announcement. So we wanted to do kind of a reset, partly because I think we've been not encouraged, but intrigued by this idea of where the series is going, just based on some comments on the mailbag, stuff I've seen on social media recently. Basically, people seem to be, at least IndyCar fans, not all of them, but some of them seem to be at some sort of a breaking point based with the direction of the series. I think expectations and reality, I think those were two very broad things. And look, we're IndyCar fans and you think Roger Penske taking over, everything is going to turn to gold. And that's not been the case, but I think that was also an unfair expectation. So we're going to kind of dive into what has happened, what we've liked, what we have not liked, and what we think is realistic to see in the next couple of years. Because I think the biggest thing is there doesn't seem to be any sort of 5-year plan that was announced when he took over, or any kind of long-term growth plan for the series, which also could be a sign. It tells you how poor a shape financially the series has been in, which we've known this for a very long time since its inception, that the IRL, then IndyCar series, has struggled financially, but that could be a reason why as well.
It could, and it could be, and I have my fair share of criticisms of Roger Penske and what they have not done, but I would imagine that Roger Penske's first order of business when he took this position when he took over this entity in this track was to make it financially solvent, was to stop the bleeding.
Yes.
Get it into the black, whatever that looked like. And COVID threw a wrench in that because of what COVID caused. And I think we can all agree that IndyCar is not in the position it is in right now if the Holman family or anybody else was owning the track and the series going through COVID.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only exception I would have to that would be if Liberty Media ended up buying the series.
Potentially. But even then, I think Liberty Media maybe doesn't put the priority on IndyCar, considering it also owns Formula One. The priority is going to be Formula One. So I have to give credit to Roger Penske for that. And two, if he took over a corporation, a track, a series that was bleeding money, and we all knew that the Indianapolis Motor Speedway was subsidizing the IndyCar series, basically. And instead of his first job, and I know he's said it a couple times, was to make the series profitable, not being subsidized by IMS. And taking that road and taking that information into account is maybe Roger Penske isn't there yet, or he's doing what he needs to do to make sure this thing is in the black going forward. And that's job number one. And we would think by year 3 that would be done, but with COVID being thrown in there, maybe that's not been able to be the case. So look, Roger Penske knows how to run a business, and maybe he doesn't run a business in the way that some people would like in terms of instant gratification and instant results. But I do believe that he took this over as a business, and he will invest in it as a business when he sees fit. But at least for the first 3 years, it has been all about trying to make the series financially solvent, put it in the black, stop the bleeding, make sure this series, not just the 500 and IMS, is turning a profit. And that's probably the priorities. And unfortunately, it looks like that's been more time consuming than maybe even Roger Penske thought. And I'm sure COVID has been a big part of that.
So I think it's pretty easy that we can kind of break down into several categories and kind of debate as such. Obviously, teams and drivers, that's one category. Schedule and tracks, that's another. Technology would be another, and innovation. I think another would be new markets. I get that in a way falls under schedule and tracks, but I think you kind of have to separate that. And then I think another, and I'm not saying this for me or for you, Justin, I'm saying this because Penske's made this priority, would just be diversity and getting, more drivers, whether it's people of color, more women involved in motorsport, not necessarily in seats, but just in general involved in the series. So I think that's 5 kind of key categories I think we can focus on. Any that to you I'm forgetting as far as categories go?
No, I don't think so. I think the big stories that we're going to tackle here, the big issues, are all covered in those 5.
Okay, so we'll start with teams. I think that's the most obvious one. I think this is one where, not that they were doing poorly in the 2019 season before 2020, but based on the pandemic, some of these were going to grade with a curve, some were not.
Right.
But I think the team health, I mean, it's never been better for the series going back to before the split. I mean, I guess you could say CART, during the early years of the split was solid. And obviously the IRL had a lot of entries, but a lot of shoestring operations then. But I feel like the team health is the best that it has been between CART, IRL, and IndyCar. You can go back, 20 years?
And that was a priority for Jay Fry when he became president of the series before Roger Penske and his corporation bought the series, was getting IndyCar to a place where it had healthy fields again. And he did a great job. And I think it's only continued in that respect. And quite frankly, it's reached a point where we almost worry that the fields are too big at certain places. And that's a great problem to have. But it also means that IndyCar is coming up against it in too many cars. Woody, I would say I'm comfortable with high 20s at most tracks.
Yes.
If you get to 30, that's too many for me.
I would agree.
In my opinion. 28
to me feels like the hard cap. Obviously, some tracks it's even tougher with that high of a number, like Mid-Ohio and Toronto, for example.
And not just by accommodating that, but it just feels like a bulky amount of cars. I feel like Cup, when they've gone to, what is their standard now? 36?
35, 36.
I think that's a great, you get to 43 in Muddy's Water. I think a hard 28, 29 max for IndyCar is that comfortable max for me. Get to 30 and above, not counting the 500, of course, but everywhere else is fine. I think car count is tremendously fine. And people will say, well, if we had a third OEM, we'd have more teams. I agree. But do we need more teams that do the full season at this point? Maybe more teams to kind of really spread out the numbers a little bit. But I don't see that as a big need right now for the series. And that's kudos to Jay Fry, and it's kudos to Roger Penske and everybody involved, is to be able to get to this situation where we're asking ourselves at some of these tracks, do we have too many cars, too many entries? What a concept, even 7-8 years ago.
Great question to have, saying too many entries. That's something we never would have imagined even 5 years ago.
Right.
So that's a positive turnaround. I know one of the other question marks that people had for many years, well, Andretti has 4, and for a time Penske had 3 or 4. Right now they have 3. Ganassi has had 4 a couple of years. So saying, oh, well, that's half the field. Well, one, that's not true anymore. So that's good. Also, as of this year, as far as we know, as Juncos Hollinger expands to a second full-time entry, we won't have any one-car teams, which is huge as far as the health of the teams. So I think overall, with teams, my grade's an A, because I don't know how you can really get that much better as far as the number of teams and having lots of multi-car teams. That's good. You don't want a lot of one-car teams unless they have, special funding and it's an elite driver where they're going to be secure. Overall, the team health to me is very solid.
In terms of full-time entries, I think you have to grade a different grade for Indy-only programs because there's not enough engine leases and there's not a third OEM and you can't spread the wealth in that respect. And I think that's a lower grade. But for full-time teams, I'm with you. It's an A. I don't think you can ask for much more without getting into the, okay, this is just way too many cars type category.
So I think, you good on teams? I think that does it for me. I really don't have a whole lot to say. I think everything is very positive on that front with the expansion. We've seen drivers, come from Formula One. We've seen drivers come from supercars, obviously from the series formerly known as Indy Lights.
Which we'll be calling it the series now.
But overall, I think team health is good. As far as the schedule and tracks aspect, I guess on one hand, you have a lot of consistency. And I think that's
one
often
big thing
overlooked because we've had a lack of consistency for many years, but the last couple of years, we've added new events. Not that many have dropped off. I think that's been a major positive. And that's, I think, look, this change has happened as Penske's been the main guy. As far as events dropping off the schedule from 2022 to 2023, it's none, right? So that's a major positive, and they're not screwing around with the dates that much either. So that's really, really good. Yes, there's some casualties due to the pandemic. And again, in my opinion, you get a pass for some of that. You hope you can reschedule some of those that were like Richmond, for example. You hope you can reschedule that someday. And then you look at tracks. So you get, Portland got back in 2018, but it's still relatively new. Gateway still relatively new. Obviously, you get Laguna Seca. 2019 was the first year back with that. Nashville back coming on board as a street circuit. That's a huge coup for the series. I get that people are hit or miss as far as the racing goes, but that being an event is massive for IndyCar. Texas, yes, it's bounced around, but I'd like to believe they've stabilized it as far as it being a part of the schedule. And then Detroit, moving from Belle Isle to downtown Detroit could be the catalyst for that event to go to the next level. It felt like it was just kind of stuck, and you're limited by the land and the space that you have there. So this could be something huge. Any other events that I'm really forgetting here?
Well, you mentioned Nashville. I feel is just a couple years ago was a preeminent event. It still is, and it is IndyCar making an event somewhere in a market that they should be in. I feel like I don't have many problems with the schedule. I know people are saying we need 20 events other than the second road course race at Indy.
Yes.
I'm really not a fan of.
That's the one staying on the current schedule as far as what they're doing domestically in Canada.
But again, the priority for Roger Penske when he took over, and he said date equity and making sure each one of our events is healthy. And sometimes it takes longer than anticipated to get there for those things. And that's kind of where we're at with IndyCar. We keep hearing talks about adding a race here and there, but it used to be you were adding races but also losing races.
Yes, you may add 2 or 3 races,
but you lose two or three. And it was a year-to-year thing, right? You'd add 1, you'd lose 1. You'd add 1, you'd lose 2. Next year, you'd add 2, lose 1. And there was no real net gain. But if you can get to a point where all 17 of your events, or 16, I'm going to get rid of the second road course race, hopefully. If 16 of your races are very successful or reasonably successful, then you can start adding other events. And I know people want to see more ads, but if it comes at the expense of another track falling off at the bottom, then you're not really helping anything. So I know I'm taking Roger's side maybe more than people thought I would, at least so far through this podcast. And maybe that changes pretty soon. I don't know. I don't know where this is going, Caleb. But I'm giving him another benefit of the doubt is you needed to build a schedule with date equity and people knew when you were racing, where you were racing at certain parts of the year. And you had to have events that were pretty relatively successful, varying degrees of success. And that's what you have right now. There's always going to be some iffy questions on tracks, but the last couple of years, it hasn't been to the tune of, all right, who are we losing this off season? We always talk about it. What's the doom and gloom of the off season? The last couple of seasons, we haven't had that big doom and gloom type story of tracks falling off, and we don't anticipate we're not having that in this off season. And maybe this time next year, we're talking about adding an event or 2. But I think the important thing has been making sure your existing schedule is solid.
Yeah, the continuity side, I think we both agree as far as the schedule goes, is an A. Now, we got to get into other aspects of the schedule and tracks. Look, I think having that second IMS road course race is essentially a filler. That's a negative. I don't know what else there is to say beyond that. Yes, it gets IndyCar on a NASCAR weekend, but you're not even getting in front of a lot of NASCAR fans. They show up as the IndyCar race is at least half over. They're not really paying attention. And the people who just come for the Sunday Cup race probably aren't even coming Saturday at all.
Right.
So I don't think you're getting a lot of exposure out of that. Yes, you're getting more TV time. And I think, I don't even know what category the TV deal would fall under. I guess schedule and tracks.
Yeah, I would say so.
It wouldn't fall under technology and innovation. So I guess to me, the TV deal has been a huge win. Look, Penske took
that's
something.
That's an A+.
A+. I get there's going to be complaints about Peacock and what have you, but overall, getting all those races on NBC, and then even after TV ratings were only up incrementally, what was it, like 5-6%? They still got a lot of races on network TV. I think it dropped by 1.
1 race, yeah.
So overall, continuity with the schedule, the TV deal, having a legit streaming platform that's great for your younger fans. I mean, overall, to me, it's an A+. And I get some people are going to complain about Peacock and what have you, but you have access to every session.
Correct.
Live, recorded, on demand, all that. Like
what, $5 a month? Come on, people.
Yes, I think that's a win. So that aspect of the schedule, I think there are just so many pieces to this category just because there's a lot at play. So we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about expansion as far as the schedule goes. And I get some of this falls under new markets, but they have expanded. They got the race and again, this is pre-Penske, mind you, but they got Portland and they've been able to keep it on the schedule even after the pandemic. So I think that's been a huge positive.
Even without a title sponsor too, which is pretty crazy to me.
So they have a race in the Pacific Northwest. That's been a positive. Obviously adding Nashville at a huge as far as, again, that's more new markets, but that's been huge. I think the other thing with the schedule, though, you have to get to is the balance. I get some people want, a third ovals, a third road courses, a third street courses. Others want half road and street courses, half ovals. Somewhere in the middle, I don't know where I stand. I'd be fine with either of those. We need more ovals. It's that simple.
But you need ovals that are willing to host IndyCar.
Yes. And
we've talked about this before.
This, to me, I don't know what grade I would give this aspect because it feels incomplete, right? Iowa, you have this monster first year. So new event there. And I get that's not a big market, but Midwest is big for IndyCar. They're able to turn that into a big event thanks to Hy-Vee and the concerts they had. That was huge. I think just the ability to resurrect that event as well after it was lost after 2020, also really big. And people say, well, it was a track rental. Yes, but they still invested and made the event work and made it successful. And that takes a lot of effort. So,
well, I don't know how much. I mean, the IndyCar did invest, but Hy-Vee invested.
Yes, that's
true.
That's
what they did. So it's all about finding that partner. So, yeah, for me, it's easier said than done. IndyCar can add all the ovals you want, but if you're not going, it doesn't matter. And that's what I put on the fans. Like, if you want more ovals, then go to the ovals that IndyCar has now. That's really all what it is.
Yeah, people have to show up. And people showed up for Iowa, just like early on, people showed up at Gateway the last couple of years.
Now it's fading.
Iffy, and I wonder how much the NASCAR races impacted attendance there. I mean, I think we'll truly get our final answer this next year. This year was bad. Next year, if it's worse, then I think we'll know our answer. But Indy 500 health is really strong. Not that we're super concerned about it, but when you have people not able to attend at all in 2020 and then a limited crowd in 2021 to see the crowd they got this year, obviously a huge positive, especially as this next year will be their first year of essentially full revenue due to not having fans in the stands and just carrying over ticket credits essentially for a couple of years. So that's big, just to have that event be full and be robust and be what it was. As far as event-wise, the on-track product is different, but I think that's a major positive. And then we're at least having conversations that we're seeing out there with Milwaukee and other ovals as potential candidates. To me, it feels incomplete.
It feels incomplete. I just don't know what else people expect out of the Penske Corp in the current situation. There's not venues lined up to host IndyCar, and IndyCar is not financially in a position to take a huge swing and completely whiff. It can't be, we're going to finance a race on the streets of Chicago, and if it doesn't work out, it'll be okay. We cannot, if you're Formula One, throw hella money at Vegas, and if it doesn't work out, oh well. This is IndyCar. This is a series that subsidizes its team to the tune of what, $20+ million every year. Let's say, put this in perspective. The first $22 million that IndyCar and IMS bring in every year, they have to pay out to their teams. That's a lot of money. That's a whole hell of a lot of money.
It's at least that. I mean, it could
at least
be more.
Yeah. So just think about that.
25 or 26.
Just think about that. It's not TV money like NASCAR throws around that they share in Formula. This is $20-some million that IndyCar and IMS bring in that they have to then pay their teams for participating effectively in a full season. That's not a good business model. Your first $20-25 million you make every year goes back to teams. So it kind of goes back to that. How much money do you really think IndyCar is sitting on? It's really not that much. And people will say, well, it's nickel and diming and there's no real budget for Roger Penske. But going back to it, he's trying to make this thing financially solvent in the black. And a guy, you could say, why isn't Roger, like I even said it, why is it IndyCar need to take more swings at some big events? If you are $15 million in the hole for your financial annual budget, then what makes you want to throw $7 million at an event that may or may not work? You're not going to do that.
True. I think that's, you know what I mean? That's part of the reason why they've been so conservative in general, is that they're trying to make this a profitable venture, business venture. We know that IMS is profitable largely, and IMS looks great. Obviously, they've invested in that. As far as investing in the series, though, I'm guessing that's a separate budget, like line item across Penske Entertainment, and you got to see returns on that to be able to invest more.
People will say, well, you spend money to make money in the right areas. So financing a 9-figure or 7-figure event somewhere in a snazzy place, let's say the streets of Seattle, Washington, just pick that out of a hat, and spend $5 million, $6 million to make it happen. If you're already in the hole, $18 million on the season, then where's that money coming from? And are you going to be able to make it back? And
also, if you can't get a title sponsor for that event, you're in a world of hurt.
And let's say you go in there and it loses $3 million, and then what? Then what? So IndyCar isn't even in a position, I feel, to take a short-term loss on events of that caliber because of the amount of money. I mean, Roger Penske wants to get to a point where IMS is a completely separate entity from the IndyCar series in terms of operating budget, in terms of profitability and all that. And when he took over, it wasn't. And who knows if it is now. But you don't get to that point by throwing a ton of money around. And admittedly, he's thrown a ton of money around for the Speedway.
Yes, sure. And I mean, that's your biggest and best investment. So that makes sense.
And for me, I think, and we'll get to it, my overriding concern is the lack of a plan.
Yes.
Maybe there is a plan. We're just not privy to it. But even Jay Fry would say we have a 5-year plan, 6-year plan, 8-year plan, whatever. What's the plan with IndyCar? I don't need you to go out and here, look at this money we're spending here, there, and another. All I need is a plan. And we don't really have a plan for a new car. If you came out tomorrow and say 2025 is we're going to have it, or 2026 we're going to have it, we can grumble about how far of a way it is, but at least there's a plan. At least we know what's going on. And is it by 2026 we want to have this, and 2028 we have this? That's great. We just haven't seen it.
Yeah, the only plan we have is the delayed hybrid engines, which have been pushed back several years.
Are still they're probably coming in 2024, but it's not 100% yet. And that, at least we had a roadmap. We had a benchmark. We had, okay, this is where the series is going. This is what it's planning. This is what it has. And maybe that's just a Roger Penske thing. You keep a lot of things close to the chest. I don't really know, but it would be nice to have the confidence of that. And in reading between the lines with Marshall Pruitt, this isn't something where internally and with the teams, they know the direction. Like, they have questions too. Mm-hmm. So if it was, hey, we're not giving you our plans to the public yet, but we know what's going on and it's great, they don't know either. And you just hope this is being worked on, developed, and just hear it from Roger. He's not averse to talking about these things. I just would wonder if somebody had the cojones to hit him with those questions when they had the opportunity, going, hey, why doesn't this straight up, just, you don't have to be an ass about it, just why haven't we seen a long-term plan for this series being made public, or at least to its teams and drivers?
IndyCar Media Day, usually in early to mid-February. Well, we know it'll be that test at the Thermal Club, so that's, I think, the next big opportunity for people to ask about that and get a comment. So
I would love
overall schedule, though. I think
right.
it's what as far as continuity, it's an A. As far as diversity of the tracks, probably a B. But as far as
B-, I'd give it
expansion and things like that, and
C.
Yeah, C.
But we have this Argentina thing would be great to go to. But is Roger looking at it as we don't want to go out of North America?
Yeah,
if you have financial backers that are going to pay the teams to go down there, then you absolutely do it. I mean, from the testing, the pictures we saw with people showing up to just watch some laps go around was a big crowd.
Oh, yeah. So that'll take us into new markets. I think overall, B- for schedule and tracks.
That's fair.
Stands.
That's fair.
New markets, this is where it gets really tough, because outside of Nashville, which again, major coup for the series, I think, to get a street race in Nashville as opposed to NASCAR having the Cup race all the way at Nashville Super Speedway, which is way outside the city, not even close to downtown Nashville. I mean, that was huge for IndyCar. Now, is this race going to work out long term? I have my doubts. I'm worried that of the 3-year deal, this next year could be it for that race. I mean, they got to have more people show up. The first year was great. People want to show up at an event to see and be seen. Year number 2, I get it was weather impacted, and I'm hoping that's the reason why. So we'll see. But that's as far as the only new market. That's the only new market IndyCar has. Going back to Iowa is not a new market. That's just a return to a track they raced at for a long time. Moving from Belle Isle to downtown Detroit, yeah, that's a change, but it's the same market. It does open it up to a lot more people to attend. But as you mentioned, Argentina, the test at Buenos Aires, they estimated 40 to 50,000 people there.
That's insane.
At the old
I'd
F1
be signing
track.
a deal right now, to be honest.
And that track is not going to be viable for IndyCar as far as I know. But the track that would be viable for IndyCar would be the Autodromo Termas de Rio Hondo.
Which is also where they turned laps, or where we're going to turn laps, correct?
Yes. Juncos and Agustin Canapino tested there the other day. I actually watched the live stream, and not as big of a crowd, but this is a legitimate track that I think IndyCar could go to, like, I don't know about right away, but I think this would be the option for 2024, assuming everything checks out upgrade-wise. I mean, it's a legitimate track. Looks like it'd be fun. I get it. It's not in Buenos Aires, so it's not like in a huge city. The town is small. Termas de Rio Hondo, Argentina. It's not that big, but it's in a resort area. The town itself, population's like 32,000, but resort area, so it'd be great for people to go and visit. They have hot springs, things like that, spa. It's essentially, I don't know the comparison for us. I guess in Indiana, it'd be like the French Lick, if you will.
Yeah.
So
yeah, sure.
If you need to look that up, yes, it's a real place in Indiana. We have ridiculous names like that, but it would essentially be that. A lot bigger town than French Lick, but the track looks good to go. And they had a good crowd on hand. I think it's a major positive to have that as a possibility for an exhibition race. The Thermal Club, we don't know what's going to happen with that. That's not really a new market, though, because you're in Southern California with Long Beach. I get this would be a different track, it'd be a road course versus a street course, but I mean, there's nothing around it.
Right.
And then we don't really have other options. Homestead's been thrown out there. Richmond's been thrown out there. Love to have another Canadian race. Where would it be? No idea. Obviously, a race in Mexico would be great, whether it's Mexico City or Monterey or wherever. And then beyond that, we've heard nothing on Australia since a couple of years ago. And then obviously it wouldn't have mattered. Even if they figured that out, it wouldn't have run due to the pandemic. And again, with all this stuff, some of the issues, pandemic related, I'd say all those ran out this year. So, like, you can't use the pandemic as an excuse. I get there have been supply chain problems. Everyone's dealing with those. So I don't really buy that. I mean,
Formula One, you would think, would be the ultimate dealing with supply chain problems, but we never hear about supply chain issues, or very rarely in Formula One. So, yeah, for me, this was the year, okay, to get back on track 2022, and then this off-season should have been, okay, back to normal. We can hit our stride. Now we can unveil this master plan that we've had in mind over the last couple of years since Roger took over, and no indications that is coming.
Yeah, and as far as new markets, I guess we have the hope of Milwaukee, which would be good.
It's not a new market.
True. I mean, it'd be new to the schedule, at least for a couple of years. They last ran there, 2015? I mean, it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. But you're
already at Road America. So.
Right, so it's not even a new market. I feel there's two different trends of thought. You're recycling old ideas with Milwaukee, or you are looking at brand new opportunities. So Gateway was I guess you raced at Gateway, but it had been a long enough away. That was kind of a new opportunity in that region. Nashville was a new opportunity. Going somewhere where nobody else is. Okay. Now Gateway's Cup is at Gateway, and Cup is in Nashville. But now, okay, where do you keep looking? So Argentina. Nobody's racing there.
No.
Formula One's not racing there. That's why you had a car that is exponentially heavier and slower than an F1 car going around a road course race, and 40,000 people were showing up to see it because Formula One's nowhere to be found in Argentina.
Yeah, they have MotoGP at that Autodromo de Termas Rio Hondo, or whatever the name of the track is. I'm sure I already butchered it. Apologies. But they have MotoGP there, but that's it. They don't have F1 in Argentina, even though there's been a big Argentinian heritage in F1.
Sure.
So that's another like opportunity. Obviously, USAC and raced there back in the 70s, but this would be huge. They obviously have the connection with Juncos, who's from there. And then who knows, this second Juncos car, who knows, could it be Canapino? You never know. But obviously, if there's a race in Argentina, I'm sure he would take part in that event.
I have a hard time thinking if they're going through this whirlwind tour and there's a lot of sponsors in Argentina that, sign me up, Argentinian in the seat, Argentinian owner, we're in. It's going to be hard to take him out of that seat.
Yeah, I think so too. I think he seems to be more of an option than I think I initially thought.
But I think it's rounded about. It's easy to say IndyCar needs to find new markets and go there. It's more difficult to execute it. You need somebody that's willing to host IndyCar. The street events, they're massive in terms of government red tape and all of that. And the Meccas, so the Miamis, the Vegases, they're going after Formula One. They want a Formula One race. Other ones you have to convince to invest in you instead of NASCAR. So Chicago, for example. Cup's picking up a fair amount of that tab, at least to start off in Chicago, something an IndyCar can't do. So it's a perfect set of circumstances that needs to happen.
Well, I would say IndyCar can do it, as in Roger Penske can do it. He's just choosing not to.
No, he has very different, all of his companies he owns are separate line items. They're completely independent of each other. And everything isn't, I do this to subsidize this, that subsidizes this, that does this. Everything's independent of each other. And he makes them profitable on their own, and then he makes money, or he gets rid of them. So for Roger Penske, his job right now in the last couple of years has been to make IndyCar a financially solvent entity. And that's been priority number one. And it's taken him longer because of the pandemic. My thing is, and I keep coming back to it, what's the game plan? And I'm sure that's the questions that IndyCar media that follow the series everywhere they go are asking, and teams are asking as well. Where are we going with this thing?
Yeah, as far as new markets go, to me, it's a D. It's not an F, only because you got Nashville. Look, I understand that F1 has exponentially more resources than IndyCar, and NASCAR has more 10 times the resources than IndyCar. But that's not a reason to not advance your sport. NASCAR getting, they've been doing innovative things, and it's not like huge stuff. I'm sure the Coliseum thing was a track rental, like the Clash at the Coliseum. Going back to an old track in North Wilkesboro next year for the All-Star race. Obviously, Bristol on dirt last couple of years. They're trying new things, and then Chicago, the big one, and they're paying for a big chunk of that, as you mentioned. F1. Miami, they worked with an NFL owner and built a track around a stadium. Obviously, they already had COTA in the U.S., and then Vegas next year. Look, whoever was going to be first to Vegas was going to have that marquee event, and at least first to go back. Look, kart raced there, F1 raced there in the past. So, but you got to have some results for these things. And I guess to me, again, you're getting a pass for 2020, you're getting a pass for 2021, and I guess transitively to 2022, just based on how you make schedules. But the fact that there's nothing new on the schedule for next year, as far as new markets go, I mean, that's a huge disappointment.
Huge disappointment, but it takes two to tango for me. You were hoping for one, maybe even two new events for 2024, and you'd like to see that momentum start, new hybrid engines, all that, add a couple events, keep it going, get to 20 events, unique events, get rid of the Harvest GP or whatever the hell we're calling it now, and get there and have 20 really solid individual events. And I'd love to see them in Argentina.
Yes. Argentina, Mexico, another Canadian race, or even Japan. These are your options. You have fans in all these countries. Make it happen.
Japan, Honda's still a huge investor in the IndyCar series throughout, and I guarantee you they'd be up for a return. Not even just Motegi, but like Suzuka, maybe? I don't know.
Just something, right? I guess it's just disappointing that there are these countries, and look, you're probably not going to get a race in Sweden, mind you, and you're probably not going to get a race in the Netherlands, even though these would be cool destinations, or the UK or Spain. But these are opportunities that are doable for IndyCar or that have been done in the past.
And when you see other series that are taking big swings at things, IndyCar doesn't have the budget to do many of those things, but if they have a player overseas that wants to facilitate this, they need to make it happen.
And how much is it that you said that Roger Penske only cares about North American events?
I think he cares about the profitability of the series and the profitability of the events, and I think and of the teams. And I think part of that is the teams always say we're going to lose our ass if we have to go to this destination or that destination. So I'm not putting that all on Roger. I think the team owners have to kind of meet halfway sometimes and say, yeah, maybe we have to take a little bit of a loss, or we're not taking as big of a profit if we want to go to Argentina or go to Japan or to Mexico. But you know what? It's for the good of the series. We'll do it. And
especially when there are TV markets where it's not that many time zones off, where it's still going to be favorable for your core audience in the US.
Japan's always terrible, but you look at Argentina, Mexico, Canada, those are in the same time zones.
Yeah. So that would not be a negative from that aspect. Okay, on to technology and innovation. Whew, this is where it gets tough.
This is tough.
First off, positives. Now, Penske does not get credit for this. The aero screen's been in place and it has worked successfully. I get there's been issues with pooling water and things like that, but we've seen several. We've seen several.
Saved the lives or at least serious injuries to drivers.
Yes.
So A+ there.
Yes.
For the aero screen.
So the aero screen has worked. It's been a great addition to the series. And again, I'm not giving Penske credit for it, but during his regime, it was implemented for the first time. He was not behind the research and development, really, but it's worked. They've kept it. So that's positive. Another positive, simply they always refine little things that you don't really hear much about behind the scenes, but they're always doing things like that. I'm trying to think of any like small things that they've done in past years that are kind of new innovations. Obviously a big one coming up, renewable fuel, the partnership with Shell in 2023. That's a pretty big deal as well. Beating Formula One and NASCAR on that. I think that's huge.
Sure. It once again comes back to the available budget and all that. And it's not where we'd want it to be, the innovation, right? But we also have to understand and respect just where the series is in terms of financially. But you do want to see some stuff. The hybrid technology, they're making it all sound all amazing and stuff. It's old technology.
Yeah.
In auto racing.
It's been in F1 for a long time.
Right. So they can toot their horn about hybrids, but it's
and IMSA
old,
too.
And it's old technology, or at least it's not new technology. So
but at least they're doing it, and at least you're getting hybrid technology added on.
Correct. So
assuming it works. That's one where it's wait and see.
You would like to IndyCar to be more on the cutting edge, but I think years and years of just being irrelevant and bleeding money, I think, has put the series behind the eight ball. I think all of this is kind of put into a big bubble that they say, well, Roger Penske is a billionaire, so why don't we have this, that, and the other by year 3 with him running things? And that's just not how he's going to operate. And you wish he would make more of a financial investment in taking a chance here or there, but we aren't privy to those books and how bad of a shape they were in and the things he's had to do to rectify them. You hope going forward there's some steps to add some things in IndyCar that we'd love to see. But I just keep going back to that this thing was not profitable. It may not yet be profitable, and Roger's first order of business is to make it profitable.
So other things I forgot about, the green tires, which will be next year. That's pretty cool. That's kind of it as far as the technology innovation, kind of the new things that we've seen. As far as the negatives, obviously 12-year-old chassis. Yeah. Going on 13 now.
Heavy car.
The same chassis, heavy car due to the aero screen. Drivers don't like it. That's a problem. No timeline as far as the new chassis. Obviously still stuck with two OEMs. It felt like we're really, really close with Toyota. Roger even mentioning them by name in some articles. That's not working out for now, at least, which means, I mean, it's a 18-month minimum build process. So
right.
It's not going to happen in time for 2024, obviously. But between needing a third OEM, like desperately needing that, and needing a new car, chassis, what have you, I mean, these are some of the glaring things, technology, innovation-wise, that they're really behind the eight ball on.
They are, and what did Jenna Fryer say? It was from Toyota. It wasn't not no, but not now type thing. So whether that's 2025, 2026, 2030, who knows at this point?
2050?
Maybe. I mean, with Toyota and Honda, for that matter, and a lot of Japanese car manufacturers really going into alternative fuels and electric power, who knows if that would ever come about if IndyCar had combustible engines going forward. But I don't think it's worth lack of trying for IndyCar and trying to get another OEM. We continue to preach it, and I'm sure it's extremely frustrating for them too. But maybe they need to take a couple chances on the innovation side to further make the series sexy enough for OEMs to want to join.
So overall,
that's the thing.
This category, I feel like, is another one that's tough to grade. I'll give it a C. The safety and innovation aspect with the aero screen is huge. Now, again, Penske's not getting credit, but it's worked, and it's been during his tenure, so I guess transitively, that's kind of how that plays out. The renewable fuels, going forward with the hybrid, I get that's old tech, but for IndyCar, that's new.
Right.
That's something different. I think you get good marks there, but major downsides with the chassis and car and the weight of the car, and just really nothing else to sell as far as the product goes.
Right. I would give it a C too, I think, and it is saved by the aero screen, in my opinion.
Agreed.
It is very much weighed up by the aero screen and what that's mattered to the series. I know it's caused issues, but it's been a no-brainer.
All right, last category as far as the specific things we want to get to, diversity. This one's hard to grade because, again, it just feels incomplete. Obviously, you have Miles Rowe working his way up the USF Juniors ladder, and then you also have Ernie Francis Jr. as part of Indy Next, and year two will be the real year we see if he's made the improvements and is capable of being in the Indy 500 come 2024.
I think you throw in Peretta Autosport.
Yes, Peretta as well.
Jamie Chadwick in there.
If she does compete in the series formerly known as Indy Lights.
Correct. I give it a B+ because I feel that the series was very gung-ho about supporting these teams and drivers initially, but that's kind of went away a bit, at least over the past year or so.
But they're still around.
They're still around. That's a good thing. Maybe not getting the financial support that they need, but when Ernie Francis Jr. needed the support, Roger Penske stepped up.
Same with Miles Rowe.
And same with Miles Rowe. So I don't think either one of those are going to be dropped off in IndyCar if Roger has anything to do with it. He'll do everything he possibly can, and I think that also goes with Peretta. But you can only do so much,
for
sure. And I think they've given them opportunities, maybe not fully 100% committed opportunities financially, but there's only so much you can do before you're basically just propping these entities up on your own. And Roger doesn't want to do that. He'll give up all the help he possibly can, but he doesn't want to be the guy that's financing 100% of these efforts.
Yeah, that's obviously not sustainable long term. I think, to me, revisit this grade here in a couple of weeks. If Jamie Chadwick is on board for Indy Lights, as we will continue to call it.
Yes, it'll always be Indy Lights.
I think I would raise it from an incomplete to a B.
But I will say, when you compare it to Formula One, when you compare it to even NASCAR, I do think IndyCar grades better than those two.
Yes. It's unfortunate, though, that Simona was... She was not in the Indy 500 this year, so that was a disappointment. Yes, she competed in other races. If that team can be on the grid in 2023, I think that also would help this grade. Again, I don't think we have all the information yet at this time as far as who's participating. So I think that for me, it's incomplete, but I'd bump the grade up if some of those things come to fruition. So those are kind of the main categories. As far as other little things, I mean, obviously, Linus Lundqvist unable to get a ride in IndyCar is a huge black eye based on how they restructured the prize money for Indy Lights. The rebrand of Indy Lights to Indy Next seems like a just complete waste of money, to be honest. Think of all the marketing money they spent for that could have just gone to Lundqvist.
I've not heard a single person publicly say they like it.
Beyond
who's the
drivers tweeting about it.
That they're forced to. They have to
tweet about
it. But whose bright idea was it in the front office of IndyCar? And are they thinking they did some great thing? Because nobody thinks so. And even the people that are telling him and her that it's a great thing publicly are saying something different in private. Makes no sense.
Yeah, that's the one thing. Obviously, Freedom 100 gone that fans really are disappointed in, and that's not going to come back as long as Penske's in charge. What other little things can you think of here or there?
I think the Freedom 100 thing is something that people like to bring up, but it doesn't really matter to me.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's overblown.
Are we seeing on Carb Day 30, 40,000 people not show up because the Freedom 100 is not happening? No.
Crowd's still the same.
Still the same.
Indy Lights grid has expanded immensely, and I get
and
that.
How many of those?
Penske's not been in control that entire time since 2019, November 4th, 2019, but he's been in control for part of it.
And how much have budgets been helped with the risk of not having a high-speed crash at Indianapolis effectively gobbling up your budget for an entire year?
Yeah, I think that's a huge factor. So those regarding the ladder and the confusion with the new names, I think is a takeaway, but positives, the grid is never felt healthier for that series.
I would agree. I don't know how much the name change hurts. I don't think it helps like they think, but I don't necessarily know if it hurts anything. It's just kind of there. It's dumb. It's there, but I don't know what the impact is.
And then I guess just being able to attract drivers with diverse disciplines from Grosjean to Scott McLaughlin to guys moving up from Indy Lights, Marcus
Jimmy
Erickson
Johnson
coming over. Yeah, Jimmy Johnson. They've been able to attract talented drivers beyond just the IndyCar scope here lately.
As much as we want to say it's an old chassis, they're heavy cars, all that, there is still a multitude of drivers from around the world in different disciplines that want to race an IndyCar. And I think maybe that's prevented the series from being as urgent as some of us would like them to be in getting a new chassis. Is, well, people want to race in this car right now, so what's the rush? Kind of thing. And there is some validity to that. I don't think it's the right answer, but I think you can look at, Grosjean wanted to come over, Jimmy Johnson wanted to come over, Scott McLaughlin wanted to come over, and you guys say this is a piece of crap car, but look at these drivers that want to race here and teams that want to enter and all this stuff. And yeah, there's some truth to that for sure.
And then finally, I think overall you're getting drivers, like I mentioned, to participate, and the racing's competitive, so that's been a selling point too.
Hasn't been as competitive as in previous years, but you could still say it's quote unquote competitive. Not for the series championship. That's not competitive. That's a conversation for another day. But race to race to race, it's competitive. Yes.
If you agree or disagree with us, we'd love for you to interact with us. You can find us at newtrackrecordpodcast.com. While you're there, sign up for the email list so you never miss an episode or any special announcements. Thanks to so many of you who have subscribed to the email list. We appreciate that. Also, check out the store. Hey, if you're looking for Christmas gifts, you can buy stickers, t-shirts via the store page at newtrackrecordpodcast.com. So be sure to check that out. If you or someone in your life is a huge fan of the show, there you go. Christmas shopping right there. Make it very, very easy for you. You can follow us on social media. Our Twitter handle is IndyCar Podcast. Instagram handle the same. Facebook, just search for New Track Record. Also, you can email us, newtrackrecordpodcast@gmail.com. And you can become a supporter via Patreon, patreon.com/newtrackrecord. You can sign up for tiers as little as $1 per month. Thanks to Xavier, Rob, and others for their support. And as always, you can follow us for free on your favorite podcasting platforms: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Overcast, CastBox. Again, all for free. Okay. Mailbag time. Not a lot to get to. That's not a surprise. It was a short week. Not a whole lot. First off, from Hunter's Way 67, in regards to the Indy Next name for Indy Lights, whatever it costs the series to come up with this should have been given to Linus Lundqvist instead. Yes.
I agree. Wholeheartedly. Great tweet.
This from Poet Shevchenko. Look at these crowds for an exhibition with just one car. Fans who come out for this deserve an IndyCar field of 28 cars. And in regards to Agustin Canapino's demo run, this was the crowd picture from Buenos Aires. So look, you're always going to get more people there just because it's a big city. But they packed the house. And then 500 Indy 1911 says, not so fun fact. In 2023, Formula One will have 2 races in the U.S. after the IndyCar season is over. That blows my mind.
I have no problem with it.
You're okay with it?
Yeah. IndyCar gets out of the way at the right time. And that's spoken for a guy that loves IndyCar, but also loves college football and very much likes the NFL. Get out of the way.
Out of the way. All right. So that is the mailbag for this week. As always, send us your tweets, emails, carrier pigeon, what have you. We'll get to them in the following week's episode. All right, news and notes, and not a ton to get to. We mentioned a driver thing to discuss. Takuma Sato. So we've seen part-time schedule considered for Sato. Obviously, David Malukas will be in one of the cars, and then who would be in the 51 car? Dale Coyne Racing with Rick Ware Racing. Linus Lundqvist in the mix.
And you'd hope it for Linus Lundqvist.
According to Racer, sounds like a funding thing. Now, Motorsport.com reporting Sato will race a third car just on ovals and also do some IMSA stuff. And then the second car would be Marcus Armstrong.
Well, he is a guy that has a lot of attention, for sure. I wish that was Linus Lundqvist.
Yeah, I think. Well, okay, this is interesting. So originally, I think it did say Marcus Armstrong, but now I'm not seeing. Yes, Marcus Armstrong would be in the Rick Ware Racing seat. So Sato would do the ovals, and then he'll compete in IMSA. An Acura NSX GT3 is one of the options. And then with Rick Ware Racing, their LMP2 entry as well. Those are some of the possibilities. So be a bummer to not have Sato on the grid full time, but at least you'd hope to see him back at Indy.
I definitely would agree. So they could potentially win his third.
Marcus Armstrong, Formula 2 driver, and he's from New Zealand? I mean, there's already a pretty strong following, New Zealand and Australia, but this would be another addition, and he's had a pretty good run in Formula 2.
Add another driver from down under-ish.
Yeah, 3 wins this year, so that's been impressive. 4 podiums. He's 12th in the standings. Season's still ongoing.
I would say he's the leader in the clubhouse, but if we talk about Roger Penske stepping up to help financially a driver, I would like to see Roger Penske step up and help Linus Lundqvist.
Yeah, there's no question that he needs to be on the grid for next year.
It ruins your message of the ladder working if that doesn't happen.
Yes. And I guess to me, going back to some of the other things, didn't get to this. Adam Stern reported that NASCAR is holding a Cup Series race outside the U.S., a win not if situation. Active talks with a bunch of different venues. Wouldn't rule out that happening in 2024. Look, these are the kind of things that IndyCar is battling against right now.
Unfortunately, they had the benefit for a lot of years of NASCAR not thinking outside the box, and they're starting to think outside the box, and that's going to affect IndyCar, not just directly, but indirectly when people start saying, why isn't IndyCar doing this?
Yeah, I think that's the the concern. We mentioned Jimmy Johnson's joined Petty GMS, part-time NASCAR return, starting with the Daytona 500. As far as IndyCar goes, still interested in IndyCar and sports car races. Also, North Wilkesboro and the All-Star race, that conflicts with Indy 500 qualifying. But Jennifer is saying Jimmy waiting on that and waiting to see what opportunities might be in the Indy 500. Says Ganassi has to finalize the 4th car before Indy lineup. So that would imply he would be in a 5th car, right?
Yes.
So we don't really have
Makes sense.
full details there on who would be in that 4th car. Look, we all think it's Nicholas Latifi, and
I guess you have to wait for the Formula One season to end before you can announce
no
that.
deal is signed.
Well,
he seems to be the obvious choice, though.
Because he can't sign the deal, maybe not until Formula One's over.
Perhaps
so
that is what that's leading
after Abu
toward.
Dhabi, maybe we'll have an answer pretty soon.
Kyle Busch, this from Jennifer Fryer, nothing at all in the Indy 500. It kind of went dark. It all dried up. And just think, Menards was interested, and
I think it eventually
McLaren.
happens, but I just don't see it as being an option in 2023. I think you have way too many teams that are already set with their lineup for full time, very limited part-time options for Indy only, and just not a lot of engine leases. I just don't think 2023 is the year.
Meanwhile, the other Kyle Larson, said nothing has moved forward with it. If something came to me that was in a competitive car, I would jump right on it. I would argue Dreyer and Reinbold, hello, competitive car, but that's just me. He also says, it's just tough, but I want to do it. So again, both those guys, hopefully it works out for them. Also, just a random side note, congrats to Penske, first team to win a NASCAR Cup and IndyCar Championship in the same season. Big year for Penske. Some other notes to get to. We know the primary sponsor for 4 races for Felix Rosenquist in the number 6 car, On Semi, I think is how you say it. They do intelligent power and sensing technologies.
Right
based
up
out
my
of
alley.
Phoenix, Arizona.
Sure.
No idea what that means.
Whatever,
So,
as long as the check clears.
NTT Data sponsoring 10 of those races, but it's another one of the sponsors for him. St. Pete tickets, 3-day tickets on sale now. GPSTPete.com. That's the website. So 3-day tickets already on sale. And then also the annual end of the season sale for IndyCar merchandise is underway now, runs through Monday, November 14th. You can shop the sale in person or online. So if you want to get some driver gear at a cheap discount, this is the way to do it. Includes IMS, IndyCar, Indy 500, Snake Pit, BC39 Brickyard, and it says WWF merchandise.
Maybe they mean Indy next.
Hats, t-shirts,
Who
men's,
knows?
women's, kids. A lot of different prices. Shop.ims.com. That's the website for you there. So that wraps up kind of the short news and notes. Look, there wasn't a whole lot to get to otherwise, but I think the Penske thing we needed to get to. Overall, it just feels like we're waiting for something to break through on this.
And you hope something's coming. You assume something's coming. But we feel like it should have been coming earlier.
Yes, I feel like we should have seen the results of it for the 2023 schedule or 2023 season with some of these new things. I don't want to say wait and see forever, though, right? And that's the fear.
That
if
is
we're
the
saying
fear.
wait and see again next year at this time,
Then we're
we
going to really
clearly
have
a problem.
some beef with Raj.
But overall, look, if Argentina comes on board, and even if it's just an exhibition in the offseason, I think that's a huge win
I'd
for
say
IndyCar.
if you're going there, you may as well make it a points race,
Yes.
but that's me.
I would agree. All right. No tweets of the week, so time now for our random split era driver of the week.
And you have it today because my phone died.
Yes.
And I brought it up for you. And we're going back to the fertile ground that is the 2005 kart season.
The 2005 kart, you have Jorge, is it Getters?
Jorge Getters. Yes.
That is the name, from Mexico City, Mexico. He participated in this season, one race.
One and done.
Just a wild guess. It was the race at Mexico City at Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez.
Shocking.
Just a wild guess.
Yeah, I'm going to say so.
So He is our random split era driver of the week.
He did spend some time in Indy Lights.
Oh, sorry. That was actually at Monterey. So
there you go.
2005 Ducati Telmex Monterey Grand Prix.
Yeah,
a track where IndyCar should be racing at because Monterey is Pato Award's hometown.
Yes, definitely. And then looking, he did Indy Lights, but it was like 7 years before that. It was like late 90s he raced in Indy Lights.
Yes,
in his
1998,
career.
12 races, 1 pole. It was 16th in points. Taking a look at who was the overall winner that year, the champion, Cristiano D'Amata.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, 2002 kart champion and an F1 driver. So pretty good grid that year, I'm sure. Looking at some of the other drivers on there in 1998. Shige Hattori, Guy Smith. You know, a last name Smith has never participated in the
I
Indy
know,
500.
isn't that wild?
Oriel Servia, Chris Simmons, who's longtime Ganassi employee, engineer. Didier Andre.
Why's that name sound familiar?
IndyCar driver.
Okay.
Naoki Hattori. Casey Mears, Ayrton Dare.
Man.
Felipe Giafoni. I mean,
Not bad.
Tony Renna, the late Tony
Nice.
Renna. Luis Garcia Jr., a former split era driver of the week.
Yeah, he's with the club.
So a lot of names from that year, but yes, you mentioned Champ Car 2005. This season, yes, you have your Bourdais, your Junqueras, your Servias, Tracy's, Dominguez.
There's a lot of goodness in the
Will
random
Power,
split era where
Tags, Hunter A, Justin Wilson, Dinger. But then you get to a lot of fun names like Michael McDowell, for example, Daytona 500 winner.
Yeah, I forgot he did.
Did a couple of races.
So Jorge, I think he's doing, speaking of NASCAR, got into NASCAR after Open Wheel.
Yes.
Never in Cup or anything. It was more like regional series, I think.
So he did the Cup race at Watkins Glen, finished 35th in 2005 for Arnold Motorsports.
Okay.
But he did a handful of Busch races. Highest finish looks like of 7th coming in 2007 for Bruco Motorsports at, go figure, the Corona Mexico 200 that was at Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez. Go figure.
Nice.
So did a lot of road course racing. Did the Glen, did the race at Montreal that year. He did do, he's a D&Q at Texas Motor Speedway in 2006, raced at Homestead. But overall, largely just doing road course type races in the Busch Series. Also did NASCAR West, a couple of races.
That's what I was thinking about, NASCAR
and
West.
Did A1GP, if you remember that, for Team Mexico. Ran 2 races, 2007-2008 season.
So one and done in the 2005 Champ Car or kart that year at Monterey. That's our random split era driver of the week, Mr. Jorge
Getters.
Jorge Getters.
Yes.
Another solid entry in our series.
Yes. So that's random split era driver of the week. That wraps up this week's episode. We'll be back next week. More news on IndyCar. Thanks for joining us. For Justin Kinney, I'm Caleb Hatch. This has been New Track Record Podcast.
Podcasts by Federated Media.